Welcome to the Saloon of Fort Stockton. Big blind is $8. Small blind is $4.
Fold.
The gentleman calls. The gentleman calls.
I fold.
I raise.
Flop.
Raise.
I fold.
Oh man, I am good. I fold.
The gentleman calls. The gentleman calls.
I raise.
The gentleman calls.
I fold.
The gentleman calls.
Fold.
The gentleman wins $248.
Fold.
The gentleman calls. The miss calls. The gentleman calls. Flop. Player checks.
Fold.
Fold. Turn.
Fold.
All in with $217. The big blind is raised to 12. Small blind is $6.
Fold.
Raise.
Fold.
I fold.
The gentleman calls. The flop. All in with $67. The river. The gentleman wins $223.
I fold. Raise.
The gentleman calls. The flop.
I check.
I check.
Player checks.
Take. Man, I'm good. I fold.
The gentleman calls.
I
Fold.
fold.
Player checks.
I check.
Fold.
I fold.
The gentleman calls. River. The gentleman calls. The gentleman calls. The gentleman wins $489. The gentleman calls.
Fold.
Fold.
The gentleman calls.
Fold.
The madam calls. Flop. Player checks. Player checks. The gentleman calls.
Fold.
Turn. Player checks. River. Player checks.
Raise. These are real skills.
The big blind is raised to 16. The small blind is
I raise.
Oh,
Raise,
I am a
please.
Wow. I'm shaking.
The gentleman calls. The gentleman calls. The flop.
I
I
raise.
fold.
Turn.
I raise.
fold.
The gentleman calls. The gentleman wins $561.
Fold.
The gentleman calls.
Fold.
The gentleman calls. The flop. All in with $146. The gentleman calls.
I check.
River.
I raise.
The gentleman calls. The gentleman wins $640. This player is out of money. Has left the table.
Wow. I'm
fold.
shaking.
The gentleman calls. The gentleman calls. The gentleman calls.
Oh,
Fold.
I am a shaking.
Flop. Player checks. Player checks.
Raise.
Turn. River.
Raise.
All in with $450. The gentleman wins $1,180. This player is out of money. Has left the table. The gentleman calls.
Raise,
Fold.
please.
The gentleman calls.
Check, please.
Player checks. River. The gentleman calls. The gentleman wins $515. This player is out of money. Has left the table. The big blind is raised to 20. The small blind is. The gentleman calls.
Fold.